Hello, I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple HTML, CSS and JavaScript music visualizer. So you can go something like this. With changing colours as well, getting them to stay so you can do other, you get the idea. Blah de blah de blah. Right, so first we're just going to create a folder, call it circles, and open this folder in Visual Studio Code. Then we're going to create a new file, and this is just index.html. I'm going to keep it really minimal, so I'm not going to do doc type or anything like that. Literally just title, circles, and body, and that's it. So in here we're just going to have one div, and we're going to give it a class of circle just to get us started, just so we can get something on the screen. Right, so we're going to need a CSS file, style.css, and in this, just to show it's working, well actually we'll give it a link first. Give it a link, href just equals style.css. That should be everything. And now just to get up and running, I'm just going to open this index.html in Chrome. And there. Beautiful. So just check the style sheet's working. So we'll give a body background colour of black. Save it, refresh, so it's working. Everything's linked up and ready to get going. So we've just got this one div so far with a class of circle. So we're just going to style this circle class. What do we want it? Well, we want it background colour of white. We want it border radius 50% to make it a circle. What else do we want it? And then yeah, we can give it some proportions. So we'll just go width 200 pixels and height the same. So what have we got? Yep, we've got a circle, very nice. And I'm just going to, just on this, I'm going to get rid of padding and margins on everything. Right, now I want to position it. So I could do it with margins. We could give it a margin, 200 pixels on top and auto left and right to center it, which does work. But then if I wanted another circle 2 for example, and I wanted to copy and paste all this blah de blah de blah, then this circle would be positioned after this, because this is taking up this whole room. So now it needs to, and that's not what we want. We want everything to be positioned on its own, so we don't have to think about other things when we're positioning each of our circles. So we're going to get around that by not using margin, but using position absolute, and that kind of removes it from the normal document flow and just lets you position it as if it's just one object alone in the world. And then you do top and left to do this. So we'll say top, we can use percentages, and this will be percentage of the body element. So we'll say 50% top, and then maybe 50% left to try and get it in the centre. I'll get rid of circle 2 actually. So here it is. So what's actually happened is the top left corner is exactly in the middle, but we want this exactly in the middle. So we could mess around with the width and height for the top and left, to try and minus this from it, but we want a nice solution that will work no matter what the width and height is. So we're going to transform it. We're going to say translate, and this takes two arguments, an x and a y, and we want it minus 50%, minus 50%, and that is minus minus 50% of the width left, that's what this does, minus 50% of the height upwards, and this will basically get it so we're always working from the center of the shape. Yep, good. Now, width and the height, they're not quite responsive. So, you know, if I transferred this to a massive screen, there'd still be 200 pixels, which is not what we want. And the way I you know, if you use percentages, the width would be percentage of the width and the height, you know, so that won't work. So we're going to use something called, I don't actually know what they're called, but VWs. If we say 20 VWs for the width, that 100 is all the way across, so 20 is like 20% of the view width. So if we save that, refresh, so that's about 20% there, but the height's not right. But we're also going to set the height to 20 view widths as well, because even though it's not going in that dimension, it'll still, it's a way of getting a constant that's to do with the height of the screen, but it'll always make it a circle. Very nice. And then, you know, we can change to 30, 30, and we'll still have a circle, even if, and it'll stay the same no matter what the screen width is. Not stay the same, but stay in proportion. So now we're going to make a couple more. We'll have circle 2 and circle 3, and we'll just try to get them in a kind of Mickey Mouse shape, just for a bit of practice. So that's them two. And if you look, all we want to be changing is the width, the height, top and left. So all the rest of these, position, background color, border radius, position and transform, all these four are shared amongst them. So we'll put these here, and we're only going to have circles on it, so we only need this, and then we can get rid of them from here. And that should work. So what do we want this? We want this a bit higher, so we want the top value to be less. We'll go over here as well. We want this one to be more towards the left, this one to be further, and probably all of them a little bit smaller. I just hold command there to select multiple. So it's giving us one, but not the other. Why not? Because that's not right. Yeah. So right, we've got all we need now. Now we need to move on to getting them to show up when you click buttons, and we're going to do this with a JavaScript file. So we'll just create it here, link it in here with a script tag with a source attribute of script.js. So what do we do? So to detect key presses and you know, keyboard presses, we do an event listener. So we go document dot add event listener. So this adds an event listener to the whole document, you know, instead of just an individual div. And this takes two arguments, what we're listening for, and a function to execute when that event is heard. So we've got three options you can see here: key down, key press, and key up. So key press is kind of key down and key up into one. But we want to tailor it a little bit, you know, to have slightly different things happening at a certain point. So we're going to use key down and then key up separately. So that's the event, and then the function is here, and I'll do an arrow function. So yeah, first argument, second argument is this whole function we're going to define now. So just to check it's working, we can just say console log working, and if we open our developer tools, every time you press a key, this is logged there. So it's working. Now I'm going to change something in the style sheet. I'm going to make all these divs invisible, opacity 0. Then I'm going to create a class called lit, and with this class then the opacity is 1. So you know what we're doing is we're having everything is invisible naturally, and then if this lit class is added, it becomes visible. And we're going to get these button presses to add that class. So everything's invisible, yep. What we're going to do, we're going to say document dot get element by ID. Then we're going to give this an ID. We'll just use this top one. We'll call it shape. Okay. Get element by ID shape dot class list dot add, and then the class we want to add, which is just lit. So I press any key and it adds that shape. You know, simple. What I want to do though is I want to target different ones for different keys pressed, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name each shape by the key that they correspond to. So I'm going to do G, R and U, so it kind of corresponds on the keyboard to where it does on screen. And then in here, well, okay, I'll show something. This function actually takes one argument. You know, we can call it anything we want. We could call it food. Could call it anything. But the convention is to call it event. And it's so you know, this is listening for events. This is information on the actual event that was heard. And if we just console log this event, we just find a lot of information about the event that's fired. Alt key here, this is whether the Alt key was pressed at the same time. Shift key, whether a shift key was pressed at the same time, and here key F. So if we do event.key, we will get the letter that's pressed here. So I'll just double check that with console logs. I'll just get rid of this line for now, because there is no element with ID of shape. And we can say what is going on. And it's just getting the key from the event every time it's pressed, and it's console logging it. So we know that we can use this event.key here in our get element by ID. So if we get shape dash the letter, then it'll, you know, it's a way of using the key pressed to get each individual shape. So we're just going to say shape dash plus this event.key, and to this shape we're going to add the class of lit. So nothing happens, but if we press G, happens, if we press R, and if we press U, all works. Now we just want to copy this, and instead of key down, just listen for key up, get rid of this, and then instead of add, we're going to remove that. So, boom. So we've got our first step in the epilepsy machine. So, what next? Okay, so instead of circle 1 and 2, I'm just going to change these to G, R, and U. Really simple. And the only reason for that is, so in this section here, I can, when I'm styling them up, I can just name them like that. So it's just really, so right, G key, what do I want that? I want it big, and I want it in the center. R key, I want it, you know, just so I don't have to think what's circle 1 and what's circle 2. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a div for every single letter, even if I don't end up using them, because there's no harm in doing it. Then if I want a new letter, I just have to put it in on the style sheet, and everything on this is sorted because it gets the right key, and then everything in this is sorted because they all exist anyway. And I'll just you know, go to one I made earlier for that, 1 minute, and there that is. So we've got all our shapes, and then, you know, you can style them however you like based on what you want from the keyboard. So I drew a quick picture. And then I just got to work and, you know, style them all up. So again, I'll copy and paste that after 1 minute. So that's that copy and pasted. There's a link to the finished GitHub at the bottom, so if you want to copy and paste this, you can find it there. But yeah, it's just not all of the letters, but most of the letters involved. And straight from this, we should have a fairly fully functioning thing. See? One other little thing I'm going to do before the end of part 1 is make it so it's not so sudden. Like if you see on this one, everything kind of fades into view. But on this one, it's a bit stark, which you might like, but I'm gonna change it. And you do this through something called transition. So this is just, so you set a transition on what property. So we want opacity to not just go straight into its new value. We want it to transition, and then we say how long we want it to take. So we'll say 0.2 seconds. Very nice. And then just one other thing. I'd like them to come on very instantly, but just take a little bit longer to fade out. And we do this by giving them different transition properties depending on whether they've got the class of lit or not. So this is not, and this is when they do have the class of lit. So here, so when it's lit, that's when it's coming on, because you add the class and then it transitions. So this is when we want the quick one. So I'm going to say 0.15. And then this here, when it's not got the class of lit, so when it's just been removed. So when the light is turning off, and so we'll give this 0.4, something like that. But yeah, you can play out. Oh, that's something's just happened there. So I just need to go overflow hidden. Yeah, and that should stop it scrolling down. But yeah, you can play about with these values until you get one of your choosing. But that's it, you know, it's pretty fully functional now. The other videos will just add little extra bits, but yeah, this is part 1 done. Thank you for listening.